What's up, everyone? My name is Kevin, and I would like to welcome you to Neuro Squad. Today, I will be highlighting a neuroscientist named Dr. Farah Lubin. Dr. Farah Lubin is a neuroscientist and professor of neurobiology, cell developmental and integrative biology at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I'll be delving into the academic and professional life of Dr. Farah Lubin, starting with her childhood, education, career, and research. Then in the end of the episode, we will discuss how some of Dr. Farah Lubin's research connects to some of the principal ideas that we have learned in our Introduction to Neuroscience class. So let's begin. So in Dr. Lubin's childhood, she grew up in New York and attended high school in New York City. While in high school, she worked as a nursing assistant in New York City during the height of the HIV and AIDS epidemic. After graduating high school, Dr. Lubin received her undergraduate degree from Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama, and her Ph.D. in cell and molecular biology and immunology from Binghamton University in Birmingham, New York. She has also worked as a research assistant at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. Dr. Lubin has completed 2 postdoctoral fellowships in molecular neuroscience at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas, and most recently in the Department of Neurobiology at UAB. Dr. Lubin is a recipient of a Pathway to Independence Award from the National Institutes of Health and FASEB Award. So to talk more about her career, in 2009, Lubin became an assistant professor of neurobiology at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, as well as an investigator in the Evelyn McKnight Brain Institute and an assistant professor in the Department of Cell Biology. She was then promoted to associate professor and now holds appointments in the Comprehensive Center of Healthy Aging, the Comprehensive Neuroscience Center, the Center for Glial Biology and Medicine, the Center for Neurodegeneration and Experimental Therapeutics, the Civitan International Research Center, and the Center for Craniofacial, Oral, and Dental Disorders. So some of her contributions that she has published today, Lubin is also the principal investigator of the Lubin Lab, where she leads a research program centered around exploring the molecular and cellular mechanisms of epigenetic modifications that mediate cognition and that become aberrant in disease processes such as epilepsy and memory disorders. She has found that transcription implicated in memory formation is tightly regulated by DNA methylation in the hippocampus, which is pretty fascinating. And another example of some of the research that she's done currently, so Dr. Lubin has co-authored an article called The Epigenetics of Memory Storage in the Brain, and this article was published in Cell Science. And so the results of this paper are that further investigations into the role of not only DNA methylation, but also other epigenetic mechanisms as potential molecular processes involved in memory maintenance within the cortex. So they have investigated these molecular processes in the cortex and their relationships. Understanding and elucidating the different epigenetic players is essential, as these mechanisms occur in tandem and not in isolation to influence gene transcription. Future studies in the field should also attempt to identify the specific CPG sites being modified by the methylation and their location within a given gene promoter region with respect to consensus sequences that serve as docking sites for transcription factors such as CREB and NFB, both of which have been implicated in memory formation. And so that is just an example of one of the contributions and one of the articles that she has co-authored within the last few years. And lastly, like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we will be discussing some of the class connections I found with Dr. Lubin's research and her work in the field of neuroscience. And in class, at the beginning of the semester, we learned about different kind of staining techniques in order to visualize and cellular mechanisms, especially in all of the different kinds of cell bodies and neurons that we studied in neuroscience. These staining techniques help us visualize the different structural components of these cell bodies and neurons. And so in Dr. Lubin's research and in her lab, she uses different kinds of staining techniques to visualize the neurons that she's looking at. And so in her particular research now, she's looking at the hippocampus region, and she's using specific expression markers to see and measure the activity and the structural differences in different hippocampus neurons, which is really amazing and really fascinating. Another contribution is Dr. Lubin's use of animal models as well as ethical animal research. So in class, we discussed some of the importance of animal research in the field of neuroscience and how animal research can help us learn more about the different behavioral and structural differences in a lot of the ways that our neurons communicate. And so Dr. Lubin has taken upon herself to use mice models in her research lab. And I think this is really important. And I think it's something that is great that she's implementing in her research, because animal research helps us in so many different ways. It allows us to manipulate and kind of see the brain in a different way, where we can create lesions or see different brain activity depending on what kind of manipulations we do. And here, obviously, she's working to see how the hippocampus works in different various ways in different contexts. And she's using mouse models to do that, which is pretty amazing. And with that is everything that I have for you all. Thank you for listening to this small episode of the Neuro Squad, where we like to highlight a few of the important neuroscientists in the field. So yes, thank you for listening.